Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Travel and Tourism Podcast, my first season. I never had the pleasure of working with my guest today, but we do have 17 mutual friends in our Club Med family. Before Club Med, she studied communications and marketing at Eastern Michigan University and is a diehard Michigan Wolverines fan. Go Blue! Her first season was in 1988 in Club Med Paradise Island as a hostess. She worked for Club Med from 1988 to 1990 in St. Lucia, Huatulco, and Punta Cana, and she was also a sailing geo. During her first season, the American game show Hollywood Squares actually came to Paradise Island to film some episodes, and yes, we will talk about that experience. From Baltimore, Maryland, but now living in beautiful Huntington Beach, California, please help me welcome Robin Brogdon. Hey, Robin, how are you?
Hey, Greg, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no. I'm glad, when I actually reach out to people, they say yes, like most people who say no. So thank you for saying yes.
Hey, any opportunity to talk Club Med, I'm in.
Okay, in case anyone's confused by Robin Brogdon, I guess that's your married name. So if you can tell everyone what your name was.
My maiden name, how people would know me from Club Med, is Robin Kopilnick. And at the time, I had been living in Washington, D.C., so they may know me as Robin from Washington.
Oh, really? Was that so no nickname, just Robin from Washington?
Yeah, well, first season, there were two Robins. So I came to the village after her. So she was known as Robin number 1 and I was Robin number 2. But we never had an opportunity to work together again. So that nickname only lasted in Paradise Island.
Really? No one thought to call either of you Rocket Robin? Nothing like that? No?
Well, it's funny you say that because a fellow Montreal geo named Jean Roy, he called me Rocket. So that was his nickname for me. So whenever we communicate to this day, we call each other Rocket.
Okay, nice. All right. So I mentioned, you went to a very good university because even I know about it. And I actually I did follow Michigan Wolverines, maybe because I just liked uniforms. I don't know. So were you a big Jim Harbaugh fan? I mean, I know I think in your year there, his arm broke or something, right? Or his leg and he got replaced.
I went there a long time ago. I was in the Bo Schembechler days and he is a legend. Everybody was a Bo Schembechler fan. Tom Brady, of course, hails from Michigan, as Jim Harbaugh and several others that went pro. I am a big football fan, both college and pro. So in fact, as a student, I even followed them out to the Rose Bowl twice. Once my sophomore year, once my senior year, came out to the Pasadena Rose Bowl to watch Michigan play in the big game. So, I'm not really a huge fan of Jim Harbaugh, but being from Baltimore, I am a fan of John Harbaugh, his brother, who coaches the Ravens.
Okay. Now, am I to believe that you went to 2 Rose Bowls?
Yep.
Okay.
Sure
So for a Canadian guy will never get to go, but sees it on TV. So what's it like being in the stadium watching a Rose Bowl? Must be incredible, no?
Yeah, it is incredible. I can imagine it's like a Final Four for March Madness basketball. I can imagine it's like World Series. The college hype and excitement is just incredible. And the Rose Bowl is a beautiful arena. It's Southern California. So us coming from Michigan in the pit of the winter months with gray, cold, snow, sleet, to even catch a 55 or 60 or 65 degree day in Pasadena was just pure joy and to celebrate the new year. Hung over watching the Rose Parade in person. Very, very cool. The whole experience was just great enough that I went back the second time.
Awesome. Now, was it at university or before university you first heard about Club Med?
Well, I had known about Club Med, but I had not been to a Club Med myself until probably 86 or 85 as a GM.
Really?
I think my first trip to Club Med was Guadalupe in 85, I think, and then Guaymas, Sonora Bay in 86. And then my first season as a GO was 88 Paradise Island.
Okay. Now, did you go with your family on these trips?
Nope. I was a young working professional. So I went with a friend and, just really needed, early in my career, working hard, needed getaway time. And again, I was living in Washington, D.C., so cold, dreary winters. And so just needed some sunshine and some fun. And from what I had heard about Club Med, it was going to be a fun vacay, which it was, which is really how I decided to pursue becoming a GO.
Or did anyone try and recruit you while you're in the village?
So, well, it's interesting because in early 88, I'm forgetting, I did go to Paradise Island as a GM, but that was after. So, kind of backing up a little bit, I had been living and working in suburban Maryland, just outside DC, and working in the district for 3-4 years, and was doing all the things that, a young professional is supposed to do. I bought my own first little house. I had a nice car. I was wearing nice suits to work, and I was miserable. I thought, geez, at 26 or 27, however old I was, if this is what life has in store, I'm in trouble. I need to shake this up. Actually, so I decided to apply to become a GO. And at the time, they were doing group interviews in major cities around the country. So I did get called in for an interview in Washington, D.C. I sat in a fairly small conference room at a hotel, and there was a group interview. And I can't even remember who the interviewer was. And because it was a group interview, most of us didn't have an opportunity to say much. But sure enough, a couple of weeks later, a letter came in the mail saying I was accepted, and I just needed to wait for a village. So I was essentially waiting for a village and calling into the New York office every couple of weeks. And I thought, well, I really don't like my job. I'm really ready to make a change. I might as well go on vacation. So I went to Paradise Island. Bob Fagan was the chief. Robin number one was there, who I met. And so I told him my story, that I was accepted and just waiting for a village. And he said, well, if you want to come back here, go home, take care of your affairs, and come back. Well, my affairs were a lot because I had recently purchased a home. I had a lot of stuff to deal with, but I went home, and within 3 weeks' time, I was so motivated to get out of my boring, dreary existence, being a young professional and needed adventure, that I pretty much sold everything I owned, including my home, packed up everything, moved whatever I had left into my mother's attic, called back down to Paradise Island, told Bob Fagan I was ready to come. An airline ticket arrived, and there my adventure started.
Okay, so you went back to where you just were.
Yeah.
And did you really not care what you did? Like, hostess was fine, you just wanted to work there?
I didn't really care what I was going to do that first season. Hostess would not have been my choice, but it was a great way to get to know everybody, because everybody at some point in time back then came by the hostess desk for something. Certainly met all the GA. That was still back in the day where the hostess kind of sat in the middle of the village, and bar beads were sold, and sort of concierge type information was given out on a regular basis. We typically worked 4-hour shifts, including a shift in the nightclub, generally from 10 p.m. till 2 a.m. Or whenever, it was really thinning out in the disco. And so it was the old days where it was one of those jobs where there was somebody at the hostess desk almost 24 hours a day.
What was the designation of Paradise Island back then? Was it family or was it singles?
No, it was singles.
Oh, it was. Okay.
It was.
Okay. Wow. They threw you right in the deep end, huh?
And it was awesome. I mean, I was not one to want to work in a kids or a family club. My last season was, but I was very fortunate that my first 3 had no kids.
That's right. Oh, really? Oh, yeah. St. Lucia wasn't a family village back then?
No, not yet. And same with Huatulco.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
old enough that they were all singles villages at the time.
Okay. Since you'd already been to Club Med as a GM, you were familiar with it. I guess you didn't have any, what I call Club Med culture shock when you finally got to Paradise Island, right? Like, nothing surprised you. You knew about the shows, you knew about the crazy signs.
It's interesting. I knew about all of that. I honestly was surprised at how many hours a day GOs worked and how tired I was.
Oh, really?
Regularly.
Okay. Oh, yeah. You had a weekend back in DC, huh?
Well, yeah. And, I knew it was a 7-day a week. I think I was taken back a little bit by the fact that, every day for 6 months for 12, 15 plus hours, you're on. And, that's tough. You have to pace yourself, and you have to really like it. because otherwise, I think some of the repetitive nature of some of the interactions with guests would get old. And you just have to be able to realize that every guest that comes through there is maybe experiencing it for the first time, and they just paid good money to enjoy a week, and it was our job to make that week enjoyable. So, we kind of sometimes had to put our best face on and just go do it.
Now, did Hollywood Squares come the beginning, middle, or end of your season in Paradise?
Oh gosh, I'm trying to remember. I think it was the middle because it was a summer season. I got there in May and didn't leave there till November. And I feel like it was June time. I think they said it was the first time Hollywood Squares ever built a set and filmed outside of the US. And they built the set for a couple of days on our beach, which was just incredible to watch them erect this whole set, the exact same set with the tic-tac-toe board that they use in the Hollywood studio. And then they built a platform where GOs could be selected to be scorekeepers. So I think to this day, I still have an old VHS tape of me being a scorekeeper and being able to be on one of the shows, which was just hilarious. And the funniest thing about it was all the celebrities that came in to be on the show treated us like celebrities. Like they were so excited to meet us, where we were like, we couldn't believe we had all these celebrities in one. I mean, because most clubs had celebrity pass through every now and then. So that part in itself wasn't so unusual, but to have 9 celebrities and producers and directors and makeup and hair and, the whole production was just really fun to watch and fun to be part of. But they treated us like celebrities. I remember they were all giving us their names and numbers and saying, when you get back to the States, call us. And I don't know that anybody ever did. It was just pretty flattering to have that kind of attention, but it was really, really fun to watch the filming and see how it's done behind the scenes, which was right in front of our eyes.
Yeah, let's go through the list. Yeah, Jim J. Bullock, Daphne Maxwell Reid, Chuck Woolery, Matt Biondi, David Brenner, Robin Leach, Susan Rattan, and because that photo you posted on Facebook, I can't tell who the last 2 were because they were bottom row.
Stevens, who was a big DJ.
Oh,
he was kind of a big guy, blonde hair, very Hollywood looking. Gosh, now you're asking me to remember something.
No, so it's just one more. It's just one more that we don't have. That he was literally the bottom right side. So that's okay. At least you got Shadow Stevens.
Yeah, I don't remember.
And were they there for a week or 2 weeks? Do you recall?
I think they were there for about a week. They were not there while they were doing all the setup. And then they came in, they filmed just for a couple of days because they filmed multiple shows. So for them, I think they did, I'm going to guess it was 5 shows because I think they did the week in the Bahamas is what it, showed up on TV as. So we must have done 5 shows and just had a ball.
Nice. Very nice. Well, I guess you don't have that VHS tape transferred and put on YouTube yet, right?
I don't, I'm going to have to find it because it really would be funny to watch nowadays.
I'll bet. Well, and being first season, I don't know if it occurred to you because I had something similar my first season. I thought every Club Med in the world is doing this. Yeah, Game Show has gone to their village. Did you think that at the time that this was happening everywhere in Club Med?
No, I don't think I even really thought of it. What's interesting too is we did meet other well-known people that some of the time we just didn't even know. Other villages in Huatulco, I remember Benjamin Bratt, who did a longtime stint on Law and Order, came with his girlfriend. He was not well known on television at the time. When they said they were actors, we kind of looked at each other and went, I wonder if they make any money doing that. Well, he became very big. And then there were sports teams occasionally, the LA Kings, some of the hockey players came to Huatulco, and different villages had that. So I kind of figured, well, each village might have a celeb or two, but half the time we may not even know it.
anything else happen in Paradise? Like at any point, you can stop and tell me a story. Like I don't want to leave anything out. So, I don't want to jump to St. Lucia unless you still have more memories of Paradise, or we can move to St. Lucia.
No, Paradise was one of the rare villages that there was life outside the village. So on a rare occasion, we would skip out at 10 or 11 o'clock and go to the casino because there was a casino nearby. And you could take the little ferry across from the bar area over to Nassau. If you needed something, you wanted to go buy something, shampoo, whatever it might be, where most of the other villages were pretty remote. So Paradise was nice in that regard, that it had some civilization around it, but really was still very self-contained.
All right. So St. Lucia, winter 89, I believe you went there next, and your chief of village was Christian Maillet, correct?
Correct. In fact, we opened that village. It had been closed for some time for some renovations. And so we were there probably, I got there late. In fact, I think Geo's had been there a week or two before me. And when I got there, we still had a week before the village opened. So we had a ton of work to do to get that place open. But that was a great season. We had circus in St. Lucia, and somehow Stefan and Lisa convinced me to join the circus. So I did the bike act, and I did some clown work, and it was really fun, really scary. Things way too high up for me, but somehow we did it. And, every week put on the circus show and just had so much fun. Again, when I kind of ran away to join Club Med, these were the kind of adventures I was looking for. So it was great. And actually, Stefan and Lisa live in Las Vegas now and have come down to Huntington Beach a number of times. I've seen them multiple times since in the last 20 years or so. They actually own a trapeze arts school in Las Vegas. So they've been fun to visit with over time.
They stayed living in the circus?
Actually, I believe they traveled the globe performing for a while after they left the club, and they settled in Las Vegas. And originally, they had two girls and were raising a family and were not working in the circus for many years. And then I'm going to guess about 10 years ago, they opened a business called Trapeze Arts, and it started fairly small, but in a matter of no time, they have hundreds of staff and do everything from teaching trapeze to all the circus arts. And they put on performances throughout Las Vegas. And fortunately, with so many Cirque du Soleil shows there, they've got a lot of the Cirque performers that are instructors for them. They do a lot of parties, and they've really made an incredible business out of it.
Wow, that's cool.
So anybody going to Las Vegas, look up Trapeze Las Vegas. Your Geo friends will be running it.
Nice. Good plug.
Yeah.
So you were there winter 89, I believe, in St. Lucia.
I was. So, true to what you hear, it is a very windy village. So it was ideal for windsurfing. And the only thing kind of different about that was you had to take a little shuttle to the windsurf beach. It wasn't right on the main property. It was up the road a tad, but Geos would often go up to that beach to sunbathe if we ever had a little bit of time. We had a great choreographer there. So the shows were really good, really fun. Her name was Carol, and I don't remember her last name. She was French, and she was really, really good. So that was a highlight. So between circus and the shows, I was also a hostess there as well. And the hostess stand was right next to the bar, which is how I got to know Terry Drummy so well. It was his first season. And Terry Drummy and Lee Siegel and I pretty much spent every day together because the hostess and the bartenders were within feet of each other. So that's where we kicked off, my second season and their first.
That sounds like that story could have went either way, right? Like,
yeah, it could have.
You, Terry Drummy, Lee Siegel at the bar. I don't know, maybe.
Well,
and you have,
yeah.
Yeah. I'm wondering, since you had access to, bar beads and whatnot, you probably drank for free anyway. I'm guessing, right?
Well,
No?
Honestly, the hostesses had to do a pretty detailed accounting at the end of each shift. So even if it was 2 a.m., before you left the disco shift, you had to do a full accounting, and every shift you had to do it. So pretty much every pack of bar beads was accounted for. Now, I'm not going to say what sort of privileges I might or might not have gotten by being friends with some of the bartenders. But when it came to the actual bar beads themselves, I had to account for every one. Just put it that way.
Got it. Understood. I was going to ask where you learned sailing, because there wasn't sailing in St. Lucia. There was windsurfing. So where
Right.
did you know to sail from when you were younger?
Well, so that's a great story. I, sailed a little bit as a kid at summer camp, so I had some of the basic knowledge. But when I went to Huatulco for season 3, I was part of the Bob Fagan team again. And fortunately, there was a group of us from Paradise he brought back to 2 seasons later to Huatulco. And I told him I did not want to do hostess, find a job for me. So I arrived in Huatulco and found out I was a sailing GO. Said, okay, then. So the chief of sailing at the time was also someone that was in Paradise with us. His name was Jim Wise. And Jim basically taught me how to maneuver on the boats at Huatulco, because each village, had a little bit different equipment, and it was not a huge area to sail. The hard part was there was a tremendous shore break. So bringing the boats in was really tough. And I remember when I first got there, climbing into the motorboat, I couldn't even get in. I wasn't strong enough to pull myself into the boat. I remember it took me about 2 weeks to gain the strength. And then from there, I was just like rock solid muscle, because it was such a physical job. I was in great shape. And so I really credit Huatulco for helping whip me into shape. And it really, it was summer there. There really wasn't any wind. So it was an easy job. And it was great to be at the beach every day. So it was really, really hot. Huatulco in the summer, not just hot, but humid. The sand was so hot, you needed, little beach shoes that you could wear. But it was great to be able to be out in the sunshine and, be in and out of the water. And it was an easy job. That amount of sunshine is tiring. I guess kind of to my point about how hard geos actually work, but it was great fun. And for my next village, I went as a sailing geo as well, which was a whole different story.
Okay, let's not jump ahead now. Now
Okay.
in Huatulco, were they lasers or Hobie cats? What were you sailing
They were
in?
lasers. We did have one Hobie, but most of them were lasers. And, they would zip along if there was any wind. There just wasn't much wind.
Okay. Now, I didn't want to omit St. Lucia. Did you have any funny, interesting, appropriate stories from St.
Oh
Lucia?
boy.
If not, I mean, I figured you palled around with Terry Drummy, Lee Siegel. You guys stayed out of trouble. Great season. Huh?
Well, I think the other thing that anybody who worked in Huatulco will remember is the 5,000 gazillion steps that you needed to walk to get back to your room from the disco at night. So if you were tipsy, good luck. Let's hope you find your room. But there were so many steps in that village. Did you ever work in that village?
No, I've heard of it, but no, I've never worked there.
Wow. Yeah. Like as many as you can think of times 10, but it was a beautiful village. And it was at a time when the whole area of Oaxaca and Huatulco was completely undeveloped. There were no other hotels. You could go into town, if you could call it that, and there was one laundry, one bakery, one taco stand, and that's about it. It really was a barren, empty landscape. Now it's completely built up, but I'm so glad we were able to experience it when it was raw and just pure back in the day. So we used to send our laundry into town, because those of us that worked all day didn't really have time to do laundry. So we would send our laundry into town. And that's how I got to see town, is occasionally I would, go with one of the guys in one of the cars to pick up the laundry for everybody. That was a fun, we had great, that village was really well set up, had a fabulous theater. We also did some really fun shows. We had a great choreographer there who unfortunately passed away not too long ago, Ricardo from Brazil, who you may know. And he did some really good shows. There were also a couple of pools there that kind of were spread out in the main area. So we often did pool shows, which, some villages did a fair amount of. This village had a couple of pools, so they were fun. And then most of us lost weight in this village because of all the steps. So, and the disco was kind of way on the other end of the village down by the snorkeling shack. I also did snorkeling there too. They kind of moved us around a little bit on the beach, and snorkeling there was amazing. I won't get into any details around the picnics, just to say that they
Yes.
were eventful, not necessarily memorable, but eventful. And, they took you off to a couple of bays, I don't know, 10 or so miles away. And they were incredible because, again, the whole area was really untouched. So the abundant marine life was some of the best snorkeling really for Mexico that I've ever done.
Yeah, let's avoid the picnics of the 80s. And I wanted to ask you
Yeah.
about the shows. Actually, were you a good dancer before Club? Did you like the shows?
I tried hard. I'm athletic, so I had a little bit of rhythm, but I was not probably one of the better dancers, but I wasn't one that people laughed at either.
Okay,
So
so you weren't front row. You weren't at the back at the curtain with like me. You were kind of like second row, middle.
probably.
Okay. Do you remember? Like, did you have a favorite show? Do you remember any of the names of the shows that you did back then?
Boy, that's a good question.
Oh, it's okay
And
if you don't. I know it was
I
a
don't
while
think
ago.
I think I did a Billy Idol white wedding.
Oh,
But
really?
that was a
Okay.
little, a little out there.
Well, that
Um,
seems cool because Billy Idol is, one of the classic singers from the 80s. So that's pretty cool
right.
that there was a show, you
And
know.
actually, there were a couple of Queen. I remember Terry in one of the band Queen. They had a lip sync and he was in it, and it was just too funny. Oh, I did lip sync a couple times. That was fun because then you didn't really have to do much except, mouth the words. So yeah, they were fun. They really were.
And then you go to Punta Cana sailing, winter 1990, correct?
Yes. And that was a whole different story because that really was a sailing beach and I was in
Yeah.
over my head.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, because you had
Yeah.
lasers, I think, and Hobie Cats there, or just one or
Yeah,
the other.
lasers, and it was a very windy beach, lots of reef, very shallow. I remember Fabio, who was the chief of sailing, who still works for Club Med to this day. I adored him and he adored me, yet he knew I didn't know what I was doing. So he gave me some grace and I got an awful lot better during the season. But it was definitely one of those sailing beaches that you really should have known how to be a good sailor before you were teaching it. Now, granted, most of the guests that were coming to learn sailing really didn't know much. So I was perfectly capable of teaching the beginners, but when it came to my own enjoyment, that was not a place that I took out a boat regularly by myself to just have some fun, because it was, often 20, 30 knots.
Just a sec, Robin. Are you saying that there was someone that you worked with there in 1990 and still working for Club Med? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Where does he
Yep.
work? Where does he work now?
He is a mucky muck somewhere. I think he lives in Switzerland, but I do see him. He's a Facebook friend. So I do
Oh,
see
okay.
he travels all over, and he's still a Club Med, one of the regional somebodies.
Okay, cool. Wow.
Yeah, he's Italian, but he was chief of sailing back in my day.
Now, did you ever try windsurfing in any of these villages? Did you try to
I
learn?
did. I wasn't very good at it, but St. Lucia was a great windsurfing beach because, again, it had good wind, pretty steady. And Paradise, I windsurfed a little bit. St. Lucia, a little bit. But again, St. Lucia was a big windy beach. So I could only go on days where the real windsurfer said, there's no wind today. So
Okay. Okay. And this way you'd only have to be rescued once or twice, right?
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. Now let's take a funny, interesting story break. You have anything that you can tell me interesting? Otherwise, a rookie mistake, I don't know, encounter with a GM, anything you wanted to share?
This is the hard part. I think Paradise
Well,
Island was like the most unique story with Hollywood Squares, but I'm trying to think if there was anything on the later events that, or the
Well,
later villages that had any fun events like that
how about
I'm permitted to talk about.
how about this? Did you know what Bastille Day was when you got to Club Med?
I
Like you
did
must.
not. No,
Okay,
I
so do you
definitely did
remember
not.
what the heck everyone was doing on July 14th? Like, what is this?
Yes. And,
Okay.
I remember being dressed up in wacky costumes and having to make like a float and, and it's funny because I now work with a woman from France. And so she's always filling me in on all these things that maybe I did back then, but didn't necessarily understand. So, yeah. So I remember building floats and putting on wacky costume. Honestly, I think one of the most fun parts of all the villages were being able to wear fun costumes and run around the village dressed as a different character. I wasn't part of the animation team in any of the villages, but whether it was a Pario show or a fruit passage or some silly getup or pre-dinner game or color war when we did blue against red, I was often a team captain, getting the guests involved in competition. That was always so much fun because the guests had so much fun. And that's where everybody sort of fought over trying to meet the coolest guests of the week and sitting with them and hanging with them for the week, because they didn't want you to sit with a whole table full of GOs. They wanted you to spread yourself around. So everybody was kind of fighting over the cool GMs of the week. So, but that was part of the fun.
Yeah, don't worry if like any of my questions you can't answer because you know what they say, if you were a late 80s Geo and you could remember, then you weren't really there, right? So
Well,
it's okay.
exactly.
Like if I ask you what were do you have any favorite crazy signs from the 80s? Do you remember any like at
I
all?
don't remember
Yeah,
any. And
see?
I also am really, really grateful that there was no such thing as a cell phone.
Okay.
And really back in the day, not only were there's no newspaper, TV, magazines, we still didn't have locks on our doors.
Yeah, that's right.
So it
Although,
really was the old Club Med.
although I wouldn't mind it, at least smartphones maybe with no cameras back then, because you know what it was like having to line up for the phone on Christmas Day. Like it was a long line, right? So I wouldn't have
Yeah,
minded
that's true.
Wi-Fi in a smartphone back then.
And actually, when I was a hostess, it was easy because I would be able to tell my parents, every Tuesday night I'll be here from 6 to 8 p.m. So they would call in and they would get the operator and say, "Can you please transfer me to the hostess desk?" So once a week, I was able to say, "Hey." And so that was easy. My sailing villages was tougher to find time, but at least as a hostess, that was easy because there was always a phone there.
Did they ever and were you able to ask them for packages? Because getting packages was a big thing back in the day, right?
Yeah, Paradise Island was easy because it was really like sort of the States. I mean, it was just it was, English was spoken. The Bahamian dollar and the US dollar were one and the same there. You could spend either, they were equal. And mail service was easy. I mean, I'm sure Miami dropped a couple times a day there. It was just so easy. The other villages were tougher. Sometimes Mexico, you would get it after you had left the village, and then they would send it through Village when they would send stuff from one village to another. So there was always mail sitting there for geos that weren't geos at the time. And you figured they must have been here last season. And so, it was not quite as trackable. Things weren't tracked with barcodes back then either. So, you just crossed your fingers.
Every time I hear the term village, I smile and I think of
Yeah.
my friend Joker, who calls village the job so nice they named it twice.
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
Well,
Wasn't
and
it? Wasn't it?
actually,
Yes. Sorry.
Huatulco was one of those weird villages where we often had guests arriving at like 3 and 4 a.m. I never understood that,
Yeah.
but I can remember many, many times standing in the pitch dark, waiting for a big cart with luggage to take GMs to their room in the middle of the night. I don't know why.
Yeah, that happened to me in Turkey. And I remember because Watuco, if it's that you're describing, it was similar to these other massive villages. I would actually go find the room first, because there's nothing worse than taking a family and who's at 3 a.m., whatever, and you can't find the room because all
Yeah.
the rooms look alike. So yeah, I would go beforehand and find it. Learned the
Yeah,
hard
it
way.
was just you figure you were working a lot of hours, and then you would look at the weekly schedule that they would give you at the weekly GO meeting, and you would see your name on that for 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. or whatever it was, and like, give me a break. Can I sleep in for sailing? Nope, be there.
Yeah.
So we worked hard. I think people that didn't work there didn't believe it. But after 2 years, I was exhausted and I needed to come home. So
Well,
I I
before that, though, I was going to ask you, like, who did you of all your seasons, like, who did you enjoy working with? Whether it's a GO, chief of service, chief of village, like,
yeah,
who
and
did you like working with?
it's so interesting because I do remember, getting so close with several people at different villages, thinking, what a wonderful experience we've had getting to know each other, and how sad that we will likely never see or speak to each other again. And then came the internet, and I just thought, what an amazing way to find friends that you thought you would never see or hear from again. And so my closest friend in Paradise Island was a Flemish Belgian girl named Bibi. Her name is Sabrine. They called her Bibi. And to this day, we have maintained touch through all of our individual moves. And that was amazing that I was able to sort of find and stay in touch with her. Bob Fagan, my first and third chief, he's actually from Southern California, not far from where I live. And when his mom was still alive, he would occasionally come through here to visit with her. And so 8 or so years ago, I think 6 or 8 years ago, he was passing through, and we got to spend a day at Huntington Beach together. I do have some pictures on my Facebook of he and I at the beach, which was just great, great fun. I know he lives in northern Italy now and has kind of put together a little B&B that he and his wife have up in the lakes region. So and just, as I mentioned, Terry and Lee were great. In fact, my husband and I went to Turks on vacation 5 or 6 years ago, and we spent a couple of days with Terry and then a couple of days at a hotel. We didn't want to burden him for the whole time. He was an incredible host, as always, an incredible guy. And we were able to eat at Hemingway's, his restaurant, many times. And it was so amazing to be able to see him in real life and meet his family and stay with them and get to know his kids. And he had a beautiful setup there on a cliff in Turks. Who else? I mean, like I had mentioned, Lisa and Stefan in Vegas from Circus earlier. And, I think just, my Facebook is full of Club Med friends that I may not talk to very often, but it's just nice to be able to keep up with some of the good friends. I know Mario was another GO that was part of season 1 and season 3. There was kind of this crew of people that Bob Fagan had on his team that were able to follow each other, which was fun. It's always nice to go to a village and see friends. You always meet new ones, but to be able to work with ones that you really enjoyed from a previous village is great. I think Bob Fagan really set the bar for me. He was the chief I really enjoyed. I didn't enjoy all of them, but I suppose, that's how life goes. And Bob just made it. I thought he was a very good manager, and he actually communicated really well with the team. You knew where you stood and you knew what was expected of you, and maybe that's because he was American, and we shared a similar culture where that's how management is done well in the States. But, it was really up to us to adapt to whoever our chief of the village was, and learn to work with them and learn from each one of them.
Yes. Yeah. And you mentioned, the internet and, finding old friends. What the good thing or the nice thing about this podcast is that that you worked with are going to hear your voice, and they might reach out to you after this, because I keep seeing this comment over and over after an episode airs. It's like, my God, Robin, yes.
Well, that would be
we
great
worked in
fun.
Paradise, and then they'll reach out to you. So that's one of the good things
That
about
would
the
be great
podcast.
fun. Well, with that, then I'm going to give a shout out to a couple of people that I think St. Lucia is the village I took the most friends along with me. From Linda to Sarah to Lee to Terry to Carol to John to Valerie. That was my crew. They were great. That I think of all the villages, that's probably the one I carry the most friends with.
So would that be your most magical season, if I could use that word, of the four, or was it the first one because it was your
I think
first?
the first one was probably the most magical. It was my way to run away from the responsibilities that I was not enjoying so much at home. I was quite successful early on, but it didn't satisfy me at the time. I felt like I was too young to really just continue in that along that path without some diversion, and I still had more adventure in me, and I like to think I still have adventure in me, of a different sort now that I've been married 30 years and lived in the same city for quite some time. But my husband and I jet off occasionally. We did an amazing trip to Africa a couple years ago, and so the adventure is still in me. But I think Paradise Island season number one, that opened the door for me, particularly with a great team of geos, a great chief, an easy village to transition to, and the first one to move away from civilization, if you will.
Now, you didn't marry a geo, but you married a geo in spirit. Can you explain that?
Yes, yes. So my husband is a Southern California surfer. I mean, among other things. I mean, he is an adrenaline junkie. And whether he's road biking, mountain biking, surfing, playing ice hockey or soccer or some other, he's a PE coach, a PE teacher and a coach, physical education. So I like to joke he's a 15-year-old boy trapped in a 50-something year old body, but he is a geo in spirit. He's a free thinker. He's definitely, I mean, I'm an adventurer, but he's far more of an adventurer. He's really not afraid of much and doesn't really care what people think of him. He's got a very strong sense of self and is just a deep thinker and an interesting guy, and a lot of fun. He can't sit still. So sometimes I get good downtime when he goes off and does his thing. The dogs and I get to chill, which is, after all those years working so hard in Club Med, it's kind of nice to have a few of those weekends. So, whether he's snowboarding in Montana or surfing on the Pacific Ocean, he's on the move quite a bit. But he reminds me of one of the typical beach geos. And so, yep, married a geo in spirit.
Well, I hope he knows how good it is to have someone like you. I hope he knows this. If you're listening,
Well, thanks.
you
Maybe
treat
he
her
will
right.
listen. Yeah, we have a good thing. We're both pretty independent and have a wonderful home life with dogs for children. But I think, we both kind of grew up with an independent streak and we've honored that in each other. So, we can each go off and do our thing. I'm heading to Sedona with a girlfriend this weekend, or I'm sorry, this week, Wednesday to Sunday. He'll take care of the dogs while I'm gone, and that'll be that.
Okay, so you live in Huntington, you're going to Sedona. So is there anything possible you miss about Club Med? If I asked you, are there three things you miss or one thing you
Uh,
miss? Is it the travel? Is it the
You
people? What?
know, I miss the warm water because the Pacific Ocean here is freezing. I never get in it ever. And I think people will laugh at that, but I never get in it. It is just frigid. So I definitely miss warm water. I miss clear blue water. The Pacific Ocean isn't what I would call dirty, but it's not like blue. So those are two beach things. And I miss being surrounded by a variety of cultures. That was part of the fun of it too, was experiencing the world through the people you worked with. Most of us didn't have the money to travel the globe. The easiest way to travel the globe was to go work as a geo because you had people from 50 different countries on your geo team. So that was just a tremendous experience that I'm very grateful for.
Nice. That's a great answer. It's better than mine. I usually say I miss lunch. Okay. Come on, lunch is made every day for you. You don't have to make
Yeah,
it.
the
Okay.
buffet was pretty sweet. Buffet was pretty
It
sweet.
was, right? Okay. Wow. Now I don't want to let you go unless there's something I forgot to ask you or you wanted to say. I mean, I know we covered a lot, but please, just you can interrupt me at any point if like before we go, if say, Greg, I forgot this or that, or did we
So
catch
I
it all?
guess I'll just add, my 2 years in Club Med was one of the most pivotal experiences in my life for a couple of reasons. One, like I just said, I was exposed to and got to know people from so many different countries and cultures, which was really eye-opening and and just, I think, good for me as a human to grow. But it also was something that, I really took a leap, giving up a professional career, selling my home against my family's wishes, against, a lot of my friends thought I was crazy. People thought, what are you doing? You're in your late 20s. I had friends getting married and having babies, and I just, I'm not one that can sit in, what, very long. When the universe says to me, it's time to do something different, go do it. I want to encourage people to take the leap. I did it. And pretty much all my loved ones thought I was insane, and I did it anyway. And I'm so glad I did. It was just an amazing experience, and my life has been so much richer because of it. So anybody, and I also knew that, look, when I was done, I had been successful, with a career before. I could reinvent myself if I wanted to, or reinvent something different, which I did. So I knew that, I could land softly when I got back, because I knew that was going to be a difficult transition, going from, a briefcase and a business suit and barefoot on a beach. I needed to find a happy medium between the two when I returned from Club Med. So instead of moving back to Washington, D.C., I landed in Southern California. I thought that was a nice, happy medium. And I actually started off staying with a former GO friend who lived in San Diego, started working my way north. And I said, wherever it feels right, I'll stop. And I only got one county further before I stopped. But, I found my way eventually. Did I get the perfect job right out of returning? No, but I learned how to be really resourceful and take educated risks and have enough confidence to know that I'm in charge of my life, regardless of what my family or friends thought of what I was doing. I knew I needed to do it. And so I'm so glad I had the strength and the courage to go do it, because it's just been, to this day, there are elements of my time in Club Med that I think of frequently. One of these days I'm going to hit one of the reunions that they keep having that I have not made. But one of these days I will, because I'd sure love to see a lot of those people that I see in pictures on Facebook.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun. Those reunions. I went to two in Cancun. I think you would like them
So
for
one day
sure.
I will.
Okay, sweet. Well, I cannot improve on the answer you just gave. I think you said it all, Robin. And so I do want to take the time just to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with us.
Well, you are so welcome. I so appreciate being invited. And anytime I get a chance to talk about this amazing experience of two years in my life, I'm happy to. So, Greg, I hope people enjoy our chat. It was sure nice to talk to you. And one of these days, maybe we'll land at the same reunion.
Awesome. That would be most excellent, Robin. I would love that. Well, everyone, that was Robin Kopilnick, now Robin Brogdon. And we will see you all next week with another installment of my first season. Here's where we say bye to everyone, Robin.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy.
Bye.